Welcome to Hiring Happy Humans, where we talk about all things HR with a variety of folks, from CEOs to community partners, sharing up-to-date trends, best practices, and our wild workplace stories. Each interview is designed to leave you with the knowledge to keep your sanity. I'm your host, Dawn Sipley of Sipley the Best. Thanks for joining in, and let's jump into this week's episode. Welcome, everybody. Dawn Sipley with Sipley the Best here. And today we are just absolutely thrilled to invite Kenneth Clark on the show today. Kenneth was my pastor at my church, and he was just an amazing mentor. He taught me a lot on leadership, a lot on diversity, and just a lot about how to love people well as a leader. So I wanted to bring him on today and just talk a little bit about leadership and diversity. Welcome, Kenneth.
Man, it is so good to be with you, Don. I love the opportunity. As soon as you called and was like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this?" I'm like, "I'm in. I'd love to connect." And so excited, absolutely excited to be a part of what you're doing and the communication you're putting out there.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to kind of get started off, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are today, a little bit about your journey, just so as as you're answering the questions, we get a little bit of an idea of the perspective that you're coming from.
Man, I don't, how long is your podcast? No. I am, again, I'm Kenneth. I've been married for 19 years. I've got three beautiful girls, 14, 12, 9. So my oldest is going into high school next year. So any tips, please.
Ditto. I'm right there with you, brother.
I love any help. I thought I knew what I was doing. I have no idea what I'm doing as a parent right now. So, but, and then, I've been, after graduating college back in 2001, I've worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was an area sales manager where I ran multiple locations. I worked for Wells Fargo, or really Wachovia Bank.
Right.
Investment banker at Wachovia. Did that for a number of years. I've been in publishing, and along that journey, I've also been connected to ministry, in or out of ministry, part-time, bivocational. And then the last few years, I was full-time, probably the last 5 years, a full-time pastor at a local church here in Central Florida. And so, man, from business to ministry to sales teams to pastoral teams, it's kind of all in that mix. And just dealing with people. Ran a nonprofit where we took teams over to third world countries and did a lot of basic resourcing, some of just the basic needs to some of the poorest regions around the world. And so kind of some of the things that we're doing now, me and my wife, I've stepped fully engaged with her wellness business. And so we're really teaching on how to use natural solutions for your body. I think in this season, man, there's so many things out there. And I think being able to give families full control of their own health is kind of what we're into. And then I run a nonprofit where we're locally engaged in what's happening right here in Central Florida, where we're writing programs for our school district, where we can go in and serve a lot of the boys that do not have their parents or their father. I've never met my dad. And so that's very key to me. So having an access to be able to mentor them, but also expose them to some things on the weekends. We're going to be doing things with our senior citizens in our community. We're going to be partnering with other great organizations that are already doing things. I'm a firm believer you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just got to know where it's going to be a part of it. And so God hasn't called you to create everything, but just make things better.
Right.
Be a part of that. And so that's just a little bit about me, about us, our journey, and where we've been, where we are, and then where we're going by the grace of God. So.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for just sharing a little bit of your background with me. So one of the things that I always loved about serving under you was your ability to build an amazing team. When I looked at the team that you had built around you, man, it was an A team. I go into businesses, organizations, nonprofits all the time, and I can always find the broken piece. But I got to tell you, you didn't seem to have a weak link on your team. What was the secret sauce behind creating that synergy that you created there that was just so unique?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that compliment. That comes at a high regard. I think anytime you're leading, you always focus on what's broken. And it's tough for us leaders to really celebrate the wins. And so Thank you for recognizing something that's what we shoot for. I wouldn't say that we were perfect by any means, but I think it starts with culture. And so as a leader, you have to determine what kind of culture you want. And
Right.
so for me, man, I like to have fun. I like to play, but I also like to work. And so I think that is the culture is how the I think the sweet sauce in life, the sweet sauce in business and leading is how do you blend both those worlds to where
Mhm.
you're working and you're playing and nobody can tell the difference. And so I think when you can get that world that way, you don't feel like you work.
Right.
And we've heard that for decades. Do what you love to
Right.
do, but there's some truth. But there's also a culture because there's people don't quit jobs. People typically quit management.
That's right.
And so, but if you can create a culture that people feel like, man, I'm not going to work. I'm going to do what I love to do. So I think, and then I believe that only comes as a leader,
Mhm.
understanding the different components of how your team ticks. Because not
Mhm.
everyone's going to tick the same way, just like our kids. If you're a parent,
Right.
you can raise your kids in the same home and they all can come out different or all respond different. We have to figure out how to really connect with that individual, connect with
Right.
that kid, and really pull out their great strengths. I really don't care what the role is or what your SOP is or what we told you we're going to do. What I really care about is finding what you're passionate about, what makes you tick, and then giving you the freedom and the reign to do that. Because if I just have to tell you what to do all the time, that is a job. I am a boss. I'm a
Right.
direct report. But
Right.
if I can find something where you're coming to me saying, what if, how can, what about,
That's the elite team level.
that is, that
Yeah.
is, that is powerful where you can, and that's the culture that you have to build. But that also comes with being able to spend time with your team, spend
Mhm.
time with your staff. You don't have to hang out with them all the time, but there's you got to make room to really understand really what makes them tick. And you typically don't get that in our staff meetings. That's really some one-on-one dialogue. That's some texting. That's some however you need to communicate in your world. But you got to get to know what makes the people that is really building your company, representing you,
Mhm.
what is it that really makes them tick and then be able to operate within that to be able to build
Yeah.
that team.
I think that's one of the things that so many leaders are challenged by. They just want some secret sauce. And at the end of the day, it's just relationship. We throw around words in HR like engagement and buy-in and all of these things, and there's no magic formula to it. It's seeing people, knowing their story, knowing their why, and allowing them not only to accomplish things amazing professionally, but even having interest in the things that don't make you any money in their personal lives like that as well.
Sure, for sure.
So, when you are building a team, what are some of the key traits that you're looking for in the individuals that you bring on? You said you would rather hire the personality, and keep that culture there, but kind of what are those key factors?
It's great. I think for me, love diversity
Okay.
because I love the blend that you get.
Hmm.
And I'm talking about diversity, not just from a person of color in their background,
Hmm.
but I mean from a gender perspective, from an
Right.
age perspective, and then from a background perspective. Because you can have two people from the same culture, but from two different backgrounds, and so all of those things are invaluable because of our marketplace. We typically have a product that we believe that most people should be a part of. We may have a sweet spot or a sector that we go after, but even within that sector is made up of different demographics.
Right.
You cannot reach who you are not. And so you have to be able to, and it can't be just a campaign. Oh, I've got to get this
Right.
diversity so I can have access to those
Right.
people. It's got to
Affirmative
be
action doesn't
genuine.
create diversity.
Exactly. It's got to be genuine. And so
Yeah.
if you feel like, man, I'm not sure if I'm that genuine, you got to be honest with yourself. Then you got to get somebody that is dealing with that team to be able to build that. You got to be able to. So if that's important, if that's an important value to you, but you say, man, I may not be the right person for it, you got to get somebody in that seat that will build that and that will drive that. But it's got to be a team of, for me, a team of diversity because if I have something that I'm offering, I want to be able to put it in a picture where you understand it, where you feel it, and it
Mm,
makes sense and it's going to move you to make some decisions. And I cannot do that if I don't understand where you're coming from or have somebody that does understand. More of anything, I can't even really attract you to it
right.
if I don't even know what attracts you. And so the beauty of having now that what comes with that, it's going to push you out of your comfort zones because
Yes.
we're so used to seeing the world through our perspective. That's fair.
Mhm.
It's my perspective. That's why we need honesty, vulnerability to be able
Right.
to bring into those rooms, those staff meetings, those team meetings, those board rooms, to be able to say, "Hey, I'm going to say some things, but you may not understand it, but we know that this is the better good for what we're trying to the goal that we're trying to accomplish." And the fact is, you need my viewpoint and I need your viewpoint. That's how we
Right.
get better.
Right.
That's how we get better.
So, out of curiosity, as a Black man, when you have gone into organizations to interview before, do you notice if there's diversity? Or are you looking for that? Is that something that you want to see already established? Or are you sometimes attracted to a lack of diversity and being like, I can go in there and be the change? Like, as a job seeker, how have you approached that
Yeah,
previously?
I would say that it's changed over the years. When I was right out of college, man, I'll take anything. Let me ride. I'll come in and and so, but I also I knew going into some companies that just because I was black, there could be certain labels that certain people may believe. So I'm not going to be the last one in and the first one to leave, and some of the things subconsciously you just have to deal with. So did I walk into a room and feel like, man, that wasn't there? There was
Right.
always beliefs that I had, right or wrong,
Right.
but there were things that I was taught or either believe or experienced that I need to be better just because
Mm,
of my color. Moving forward, I think now, and now that I'll share my age, I'll be 44 this summer. I'm in a different place where I kind of know what I want and I
right.
know what I'm not willing to put up with. And so you get to that place where you don't know what you don't know when you're 22 and 23. But at 44, you know what? I know what I'm looking for. I know what I want to be a part of, and I know what I bring to the table. And
Right.
so if we're not going to agree to this, man, I'm not upset or mad. I just got to keep it moving. And
Just not
so,
mine. Right.
but I think what we have to get better at is when we are interviewing and when we are thinking about onboarding new prospects, it's creating a culture where it does feel like they are wanted and they are accepted. What's tough sometimes is that we can go on a website and we see all the shades of people. We
Right.
see the ages.
Stock photos.
We see all of the photos. The I stop. We keep them in company. But I
Right.
walk into that room, the interview. I don't see no I stock photo. I
Right.
just see this, and I'm like,
Right.
what's happening? And so you can still do that, but you kind of have to adapt and become something that sometimes you're
Mhm.
not, just to be comfortable in an environment. And when you do that, you do not get the best out of that employee when they're marginalized. And so you're getting a percentage of that person, a fragment of their what you saw in that interview or what you saw powerful. You're only getting a fraction because they really can't get to the place where they're honest or vulnerable because there's not a place for them to feel like they're needed, wanted, and there's not trust available. So it is very key that everybody feels some type of level of comfort in that creative space or really being a part
Right.
of your organization.
Man, I love that right there because I think when I talk to my white counterparts, that's the part that they don't understand. And it's always fascinating to me that they're not able to put themselves in those shoes. They don't understand what racism is. They don't understand what discrimination is. And being in HR and then having the blessed perspective of counseling with many business owners about what do you love about this candidate, what are your concerns about this candidate, and in these vague, veiled hints of racism are still very alive in our society today. And it may not be done with malicious intent, but there are presumptions made and things like that. Do you have a particular story that you think would be a powerful representation of what the typical Black man is seeing today in 2022? Because there's a lot of people who don't think racism is a thing. They think that it went away many years ago.
Yeah, I think I can't speak for all Black men.
Of
I can
course,
speak
yes.
from my experience, and I think and I will say another thing. I answered the second your last question based on my age, how I respond when I was 21 versus 44.
Right.
That's me. I don't think minorities, not just Black, but any minority in the company will wait 20 years any longer. I think that gap, they're getting very clear a lot earlier what they're willing
Right.
to be a part of. And so I think most companies, if companies aren't for a cause and companies don't have something built in that feels like they're accepting of cultures and different things, I
Right.
don't think that diversity palette will tolerate I'm just going to grind this out for
Right.
long periods of time. And so,
Do it.
but to answer your question,
Right.
for me, yeah, there's been stories. I think for me, being in rooms where you would offer up solutions to things that you even saw coming, and then it was downplayed. But you could have a counterpart that could reference that same thing at a different meeting or a different, and it's like, oh yeah, we should do that. Huh. I mean, there's been times where I realized, you know what, maybe my voice will not uh, go well in that room. And why am I even in the room?
Right.
Um, but so then I put a seed into a friend that was in that room and say, hey, this may be a really good idea. They'd pitch it
Wow.
and they felt like that's gold. And that's
Right.
okay because it affected me because we're on kind of the same thing. And so we still get
Right.
to do it. It's just I didn't. So that was kind of frustrating. Like, man, that was my idea. That was
So
my
you figure
thought.
out the rules of engagement, change your way, and then pitch it up for the greatness of the organization then.
You got to be able to adapt. And so I think
Right.
that's, if you're going to have diversity in the room, then
Mhm.
then the whole point of that is they should speak from their viewpoint, their experiences. It's not diversity if you invite somebody of a different race and color and you tell them what to say and you tell them what to wear. That's not diversity.
No. Yeah.
Um, that is you using them to as a placeholder, but it's still your viewpoint and your thoughts. So if they're going to be diverse, then let them say what they need to say from their viewpoint, their experiences and their expectations, and that's how you get into the
Right.
meat of really hearing and building a culture of diversity and fun. And I tell you, when it's humming and when it's working and people can feel safe and man, you'll get all kind of ideas. You'll get all kind of things you could never put a monetary value on.
Right.
And there's so much joy that comes out of a place that is safe for people to communicate and fail and be a
Yes.
part of because they know that they're all in it together. So it's just a dope perspective.
Yeah. I think you once said, you don't want people in compliance, you want them into agreement. And that really stuck with me. I think that's when we were studying the book The Third Option,
Mhm.
and you can make your people do what you need them to do, but that's not the goal. At the end of the day, you want them in agreement and excited about the mission and the way of accomplishing things together.
For sure,
I
100%.
love that. So with having come this far, right? Because we have this journey, through life and everything, and hindsight is always 2020. What is one thing that you would tell 18-year-old PK? A
It's
business
so true.
advice to just put you light years ahead, or to soften your heart, or to give you fresh perspective. What's one piece of advice that you would go back and tell that young man?
Man, um, I would have read sooner. I didn't become a reader to probably the last decade, where I read probably 20 pages a day, which is equivalent to a couple books a month.
Yeah.
Just was a more of a learner uh, because The world's going to keep changing. And unless you are, when your education stops, if you're not podcasting, listening, growing, retaining information, you may work 15 years, but you really have been on a job 1 year
Right.
because you haven't learned. You
Yeah.
haven't learned anything. So I would have just been an advocate for man. Read, learn, grow, get more information. And then I think it would be um, anybody you have the opportunity to lead, cherish that season. And when that season ends,
Mm.
it's okay. We're not always going to be together forever. And then when that door is closed, keep it moving. Like what everything that is for you is in front of you, not behind you. And so many times we sit and dwell on things on the past. And that was just the next step in your growth to where God has you
Right.
and where you're
Right.
going. But so many times the best is yet to come. Like we haven't even started. You haven't even, I mean, and so I think that's if I'm looking back on a young Kenneth, hey man, learn and
Right.
know that hold everything and everybody. And I think my own brokenness growing up with not having a father, never beat my dad, you kind of really cling to relationships and really find a lot of value in that. But there's also a side to that cannot be healthy. But because when people don't respond or act the way you want them to, then it's personal and it's never personal.
Right.
Uh,
It's
it's
just
just
business.
some of your insecurities and your own brokenness. And so, but learning and growing and continue to do those things. And obviously, this is apart from my own personal relationship with God, but just from a practical business thing. Man,
Right.
what do what do you want to learn, and then get around those people that are doing it? What do you want to learn? Get those books that are teaching you. People that put their whole life story in a book that costs you pennies to buy.
Right.
You go learn a new skill for $12.99.
We
Why
live
would
in a data rich time. We have never in the history of the world had so much information at our fingertips. I mean, it's just really unbelievable. And I think I'm in that same boat with you, man. I got out of college and I just quit reading. I didn't want to see another book. I didn't want nothing a part of it.
Yeah, I think
But boy, once
we were so forced to learn a subject. Now, depending on what your
yes,
degree, and that's fair. But then we have to flip it is like, what interests me?
right,
What do I want to learn? And so I've heard people say, read something that's gonna, develop your mind, read something that's of interest, and maybe read something that's on leadership. And so the
right.
interest can be, man, I'm interested in boats. So you go figure out, but so something that's always piquing that
Mhm.
interest. And I think when you're in that vein and kind of have a pulse on, you're always learning, always acquiring information. Man, any room you sit in, you'll have something to offer.
Yeah. One of the initiatives I've been really concentrating on lately now in the last 2 years that I've been doing more career coaching is kind of what you alluded to is people mourn closed chapters. They mourn the loss of a job. They mourn the lack of a degree. They mourn that these chapters that are kind of behind them and done. And I'm encouraging people, when you're starting your job, think about how you're going to exit, because 99% of the time in today's world, there will be a separation of employment, either by their decision, your decision, or the good Lord's. You are going to leave that place of employment. So have that in mind, to be comfortable with what that looks like. And don't be sad about those closed chapters. Look and get and I think that people mourn it because they don't get everything out of it that they should have, and they see those opportunities lost and things like that. So just encouraging people to live in the day, to live in the moment, get everything that you can out of your employer as far as education, as far as exposure, as far as leadership opportunity. The boss coming in and giving you that big project, it isn't a burden. It's an opportunity for you to stretch yourself and expose yourself to things and concepts and technology that you haven't necessarily had the opportunity to do, and just be curious, right?
I'll say
It
the
goes
last
along with
thing
learning.
uh, is you can't fire purpose.
Hmm.
When you have
Yes.
a purpose, it
Let's
doesn't
go.
matter.
Preach,
So that
PK.
same energy of purpose, so that employer says, you know what? I think we need to go our separate ways. That doesn't stop my purpose. It just shifts to something else.
Yeah.
And even if you change you choose to change your career path, if you still got purpose, that season, man, thank God for that season. Thank you for the opportunity. What did you learn? But keep it moving. The next model is what's next,
Right.
because you can't fire purpose. You can't quit purpose. And when you know what your purpose is, when you know where you, and if you don't, you got to figure that out. You got to whiteboard that. You got,
Know your
that's a
why.
whole different podcast.
Absolutely.
That's a
Yeah.
whole different, but you got to get that purpose, because you can work anywhere, but you got purpose. I could go work at Disney World and have purpose and know
Amen. Amen.
I could be anywhere. So just know that if you're in that transition or whatnot, you can't fire purpose. You
Yeah.
know, it'll
Love
go
that.
just find somewhere else.
Love that. I think we're just going to end right on that. You can't fire purpose. That's going to be the title of this podcast right there.
I
So
love it. I love it.
thank you so much, PK, for having me. I hope to have you back around the corner down the road when you've got some more stuff to talk about and some more things to share, because I could pick your brain on leadership and servitude and purpose and mission all day with you. So thank you so much for joining me.
Well, I appreciate the time. It's always an honor, and just what your connections and what you do for our city. It's just really an honor and a privilege to get to call you friend, and what a privilege it was to pass you for a season. And so love what we get to do together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for spending time with us today. If you want more HR stories and resources, go to simplythebest.com to join our newsletter. That's SIPLEY. Until next time, stay happy.